Hello, and welcome back to the 8th episode of Death Row Executions. Today's episode is on Charles Russell Rhines. Charles was born on July 11th, 1956, and was the youngest of 4 children. At a very young age, Charles was diagnosed with ADHD but never got any help or support for this disorder. He ended up dropping out of school at a very young age. Now, I once heard a judge verbally say that all military men were upstanding citizens, and she felt they did absolutely no wrong. Me personally, I respect people who go to war, but I typically treat people at face value because you never know their beliefs or what they do behind closed doors. With that being said, Charles later joined the military and was sent to South Korea, but was eventually kicked out and did a few prison stints for robbery and burglary. There is not much on his early life, but from the little information that is available, he was a hyperactive man who was in and out of trouble and had no formal education. Charles had a few odd jobs, with one of them being at a donut shop called Diggum Donuts. One day, Charles's co-worker, Sam Harder, who was 17 at the time and later became Charles's gay lover, gave Charles a ride home. He found out Charles lived in a motel, and when Sam noticed this, he offered Charles to move in with him. After moving in with each other, Sam walked into Charles's room one night, and he was caught watching gay porn. Later that night, Charles went to apologize to Sam and said, "Well, now you know I'm gay." The next day at work, Sam joked with fellow employees about Charles's sexuality and thought it was ironic that he grew up with such a strict upbringing and is now rooming with a gay man. Days later, Charles was fired from the donut shop, so most likely he was fired because of his sexuality. Sam was later interviewed and said that he felt bad about him getting fired. What the manager of the shop did not know was that Charles had kept a key to the store with the intention of later robbing it. 3 weeks after being fired, on March 8th, 1992, at the age of 26, Charles used his spare key to open the door to the donut shop. It was late at night, snowing, and very dark and cold. Charles had a flashlight with him and walked to the store's office and started stealing whatever he could. All of a sudden, 22-year-old Donovan Schaefer, who was there to deliver supplies, walked in on Charles in the office. Charles got startled, backed away, grabbing a knife out of his pocket, and ran towards Donovan, stabbing him to death so he would not be caught. What's crazy about the aftermath of his crime is Donovan's mom was in the media asking for justice. The murder was very public, and so were the funeral details. Charles Rhines had the nerve to attend Donovan's funeral, console mourning friends and family members, and even signed the guest book of all things. After attending the funeral, Charles fled to Washington from South Dakota, in which the crime took place, and stayed with a new roommate. Stupidly, Charles confessed his crime to his new roommate in Seattle and then stalked his roommate to make sure that he never went to the police, and even went as far as threatening to kill his girlfriend if he ever went to the cops. 4 months later, Charles was arrested and being questioned for a robbery he had recently done in Washington. While being questioned, he asked the detectives if the cops from South Dakota were there. This made the detectives investigate, and when they questioned him further, he had admitted to murdering Donovan in South Dakota, so he basically shot his own self in the foot. During the trial, the jurors had a hard time deciding whether or not to give him life in prison or the death penalty. Jurors wrote a letter to the judge and apologized if any questions were inappropriate. The jurors knew Charles Rhines was gay, so some of them felt as if he would enjoy life in prison. It seems pretty ignorant to me, but they asked the judge if Charles had life in prison, would he have a cellmate? Would he be allowed to create a group of followers or admirers? Would he be allowed to have conjugal visits? And the judge declined to answer all of the questions and told the jurors that everything they needed to know was in the jury instructions handbook that they had been given. 8 hours after this interaction, the jury sentenced Rhines to death. Charles was on death row for 28 years. He tried to appeal his sentence multiple times because he believed that he was being profiled for his sexuality. His final appeal was rejected, and he was set to be executed by lethal injection on November 4th, 2019, at the age of 63, which was just last year. In 2019, he was the one and only person executed in South Dakota. For his last meal, he had fried chicken, cantaloupe, lefse, yogurt, butter, black licorice, cookies and cream ice cream, root beer, and coffee with cream and sugar. I got a hold of his final words transcript, and I'm going to read a portion of what was said. I also want to mention that after being strapped in, he was making love symbols with his hands and also the hang loose symbol as well. The victim's mother, Peggy Schaefer, said he wasn't remorseful at all, and I actually question, if someone's on death row for almost 30 years, are they supposed to feel remorse the whole time? Are they supposed to be sad for 30 years? I'm sure mentally it's extremely tough to be on death row for 30 years, and the criminal might end up feeling angry or resentment themselves. And to me, I think it's a double-edged sword. Anyway, the warden was speaking with Charles Rhines, and he stated, "Charles Rhines, you have been convicted of the crime of first-degree murder of Donovan Schaefer. You have been sentenced to death by lethal injection for this crime. This is the time and place for the execution of that sentence. Do you have any last words?" Rhines replied by saying, "Yes, I do. Edwin and Peggy Schaefer, I forgive you for your anger and your hatred towards me, and I pray to God that He forgives you for your anger and your hatred towards me. And thanks to my team, my legal team, and the people who stood with me to the end here. I appreciate it. I love you all. Goodbye. Let's do this. Let's go." The time of death was 7:39 p.m. I want you guys to let me know what you think about his final words in the comments below. Even if he didn't feel any remorse then, do you think he could have at least apologized for taking their son's life away instead of just saying he forgives them? I mean, I do feel that his parents have the right to be angry. Thank you for watching this episode, and if you are interested in these stories and growing with me, please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you all for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.